Good evening and welcome to our July 16th, 2025 Board of Douglas County Commissioners 5:30 business meeting. Paper copies of the agenda are available to those here in person, and a full packet is available on our website. Reviewing our agenda, first we'll consider our consent agenda. There are 2 items on that agenda. After our consent agenda, we'll have general public comment. We welcome general public comment for addressing issues not on today's agenda, but otherwise related to county business. Given our limited time and the need to have an orderly and efficient meeting, we apply certain rules regarding public comments. We'll do our best to enforce these rules consistently and without regard to the point of view expressed by the speaker. Here are the rules. Each speaker will be limited to a total of 3 minutes of speaking time. However, we'll accept public comment of any length in writing. Individual speakers may not donate unused time to other speakers. 3, all comments must address topics within the jurisdiction of the County Commission. And 4, we reserve the right to mute or remove any speaker whose comments are threatening, aggressively hostile, or belligerent. Campaigning for public office during public comment period is not allowed. Please give your full name and address for our meeting minutes and address your comments to the Commission. Please also know that the comments received by the Commission during our meetings do not necessarily represent the views of Douglas County government, but we value the input. We don't usually respond to general public comments on the spot, but if you leave your contact information with county staff, we'll try and get your specific questions answered. After that, we'll move to our regular agenda. There are 5 items on tonight's regular agenda. We're going to start with a planning item to conduct a public hearing for our first ever vacating of a lot. Then we'll consider a rezoning from CP1 to Ag1. We'll welcome our friends from the city to talk about a 15-year, 95% neighborhood revitalization area. And then the last 2 items are related to our revenue neutral rate hearing and for both Douglas County and for Consolidated Fire District 1. For each action item, we'll hear from staff or the applicant, followed by questions from the Commission, and then open up the items for public comments relevant to that item. Once public comment is closed, we'll bring the item back to the Commission for further discussion and a vote. Finally, a recording of this meeting will be available on the county's YouTube page and website. Commissioners, there are 2 items on our consent agenda. Would anybody like to remove one of those items for further discussion? Not seeing any. Anyone here in the public like to remove one of those items? Anyone online, Sarah? Okay, Commissioners, I'd welcome a motion on the consent agenda.
Commissioner Reed, move to approve items 1.1 and 1.2.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. All right, we'll move to general public comment. Is there anyone here at the courthouse who'd like to provide general public comment this evening for an item not on our agenda? Not seeing anyone. Sarah, anyone online? No one online. We'll close public comment and we'll move on to our first regular agenda item, which is from the Planning Department to conduct a public hearing to consider vacating Lot 5, Block 1, Twin Ridge Heights West Subdivision. And I see Mary Miller stepping up to the podium. Hello, Mary.
Good evening, Commissioners. Mary Miller, City County Planner. There are 2 items that are closely related. And what I'd like to do, if possible, I'd like to go through and discuss them both because the zoning will give you a lot of background for the lot vacation. But then you would have to hold a hearing on the lot vacation and vote on it separately. And before I get started, I just want to give you a very brief summary of why we're doing such a unique process. The property owner owns a platted lot and his intent was to build a house on it. But when he began drawing up his plans, he realized there's extreme topographical changes on this lot and it would be very difficult. He also owns a very large parcel to the west. It's has no road frontage, so it's not vested. It's not eligible for a building permit, but it does have a nice level site for a house. So that was his goal, is just to include some of that land with the lot so he could build on it. And we looked at various options. Zoning and code staff and I looked at different options. There aren't a lot of options right now. And so the one we found out and settled on was to vacate the lot and then rezone it to the Ag 1. And then he can go through the agricultural subdivision boundary survey, which is an exemption, and he can create then a buildable parcel on the Ag 1 district. And so that's kind of a brief synopsis, but I'll go through that. But first I'll talk about the request to vacate. The lot is Lot 5, Block 1 in the Twin Ridge Heights West subdivision. It's located about halfway between Lakeview Lake and Lecompton. It is within the 3-mile radius of Lecompton, so the city was notified. They were invited to a joint planning commission meeting, but they had no concerns and they did not attend the meeting. This shows the platted area. The figure on the left is the actual plat, and the little property in the bottom with the yellow dot, that's the lot that's being requested to be vacated. And you can see how it looks on the right. There's a lot of woodland on the west side of that main road, and the little property is in the south end of that cul-de-sac. So we worked with the county councilor, as this is a brand new project, and there's 2 statutes we had to look at. First, the applicant had to file a petition to vacate, and they did that. And then a notice of the hearing had to be provided at least 20 days prior to the hearing, and that was provided. And the next statute kind of gives some of the criteria. You can approve it if the hearing is correctly noticed, and if we find there is no loss or inconvenience to the public, and that no private rights are injured or endangered. And if it's approved, then the order of the board to be kept at the Register of Deeds, and that would be a resolution. The county councilor drew up a resolution to use, and then the applicant would pay the cost of recording that. So those are the criteria. This is a close-up of that platted lot. It shows the easements in blue. When they did lots, this was platted in 1988, and so they platted it with similar to the way you would do a city plat. They put easements along the periphery of the lot, and that was for the extension of urban utilities. Where this is located, it's very unlikely that it'll annex. If it does, it'll just have to be replatted. We don't expect to annex for the foreseeable future, not within the life of our comp plan for sure. So those peripheral easements are not needed. There is an easement along that road right-of-way that just barely bumps into the subject property. If I can get my cursor, just this little bit of easement. So I contacted the service providers in the area, Free State Electrical. They said they had no problems with the vacation. They would just bring their poles down the road right-of-way and extend service then to the lot, to the residents. Rural Water District number 6 also said they had no concerns with the vacation. Their water mains would also be in the right-of-way. And then the property owner would have to extend the service lines to serve the residents. So there were no concerns for many of the utility service providers in the area. So as there'd be no damage to private or public entities, and as the process requirements have been met, and the applicant will pay the recording fee for the resolution, staff does recommend approval of this petition to vacate that lot. And so I'll move into the rezoning because I think that'll make the reasoning behind the vacation request clear. This shows the subject property, and the graphic to the right shows the topography. It's very steep. There's a ravine right through the middle. And so their plans, as you can see in the circled area, is to just have the driveway meander around the lot in order to have as low of a grade as possible for the driveway. And then the house would be located just to the west in that clearing where it's more level. And you can see the leveler area in that graphic to the right. And the reason this was difficult is because in order to be more deliberate about rezonings and development in the rural area, each zoning district has its own type of land division. So Ag 1, you could only divide land through that 20-acre subdivision exemption if you want a buildable parcel. Ag 2, it has a provision for a certificate of survey, but the property owner did not elect to rezone to Ag 2. And then the CP, the current zoning, you can either do a certificate of survey or a plat. But the issue, at first we had thought we could just rezone more land to CP and expand the lot, replat. But the CP district was closed a few years ago in response to a lot of a lot of development in the urban growth area right after the South Florence Trafficway was completed. And so that district is currently closed and we can't rezone to it. And so this process is the solution. Again, this just shows the property. So these are the rezoning review criteria that we look at. The first one is the proposed zoning and land use compatible with zoning and land uses in the area? The area is primarily Ag 1 and CP, which is the current zoning and the proposed zoning. All the Ag 2 parcels are shown in tan, and these just converted with the adoption of our zoning regs in 2020 because of their size. They were not intentionally rezoned due to any specific characteristics except for their size. So this rezoning would be very compatible and similar to other zonings in the area. And the land use would be no change because there would be a permitted house on the area outlined in the red dots. It would just be moved to the west. So it would be the same. Is it compatible with the character of the area? And this area is a little unusual. A lot of time when we pull up the area, we look about 1 mile from the subject property, which is about a 4-mile square. And most of the time, agriculture is a predominant use. In this case, it's not. Due to the topography, we have lots of woodlands and a lot of residences. There is agriculture in the area, but woodlands and residential uses are the predominant. And as you can see in the middle, the only change being proposed is to move the residents from this parcel to the west. So that would maintain the character of the area. What is the suitability of the property to uses permitted in the CP zoning? Due to this topography, it's very poorly suited. If this was platted today, this would probably not be platted as a lot, but they didn't have GIS and aerial surveys like we have when they did it in 1988. It's also not well suited for agriculture or uses allowed in the Ag 1 district, but it would allow that driveway to meander, and then it would serve the parcel to the west that is more suitable for the residential development. We look at, is it compliant with the recommendations in the comprehensive plan? In Chapter 2, Environmental and Natural Resources, there is an action step that recommends we adopt regulations to require grading permits that would minimize grading and steep slope development whenever possible. And while this is not a new regulation, this rezoning would eliminate the need to do a lot of grading and steep slope development. So it's meeting the intent of that. Chapter 3 wants to preserve the rural character and to seek conservation of identified sensitive lands. The comprehensive plan identifies steep slopes as sensitive lands. So I think the plan that the applicant has would conserve those sensitive lands. And then the last goal listed is to provide housing opportunities while conserving the rural character. And so this would be maintaining a housing opportunity. There's an opportunity for one house. We're not increasing it, but we're maintaining it. So that is in compliance with the comprehensive plan. There are no area plans adopted, as this is not within the urban growth area of any city. It has been vacant since it was platted and zoned in 1988. So due to the topographical problems, the rezoning would not detrimentally affect any nearby properties. As a matter of fact, reducing the need to grade and do a lot of changes to the site would probably benefit nearby properties. And as there would be no detrimental impacts, there would be no gain to the public by denying the rezoning. There would be a hardship to the applicant, as then they would have to find a way to develop on this platted lot, which would be difficult. And the Planning Commission considered this rezoning request at their June meeting, and they voted unanimously to forward it to you with a recommendation for approval. And so I'll stand for any questions, but you would just need to vote on the petition to vacate, and there's a resolution to adopt, and then also to vote on the rezoning request and that resolution. And the applicant is present today if you have any questions for them as well.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for Mary? Okay. Mary, I think we have to open the public hearing at this point. Is that correct, Sarah?
You
Yeah.
would hold a hearing on the vacation.
Okay. So we're going to open the public hearing and take public comment on the proposed vacation petition. Is there anyone who would like to provide public comment on this item? Anyone online, Sarah? Okay, we will now close the public hearing. And at this point, commissioners, if you have comments, or we take a motion to approve the vacation petition for us.
I would make a motion if you're ready. I move to approve the vacation petition with the provision that the cul-de-sac shall remain and the county is preserving the dedication of that area in favor of the county for public use based on the findings presented in the staff memo and adopt Resolution 25-28.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further conversation? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. The property has now been vacated. And let's move on to our next item, which is the rezoning. Commissioners, do you have any questions on the rezoning? Is there any public comment on the rezoning? Anyone online, Sarah? Okay, commissioners, if you have comments or motions on the rezoning request.
I'll make a motion. I move to approve the request to rezone Z-25-0006, approximately 6.42 acres of Lot 5, Block 1, Twin Ridge Heights West subdivision, located in the terminus of North 1917 Road from CT Cluster Preservation District to AG1, based on the findings presented in the staff report, and adopt Resolution 25-29.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion, commissioners? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you, Mary. All right, that moves us on to our next agenda item, which is a county participation in a 15-year, 95% neighborhood revitalization area, NRA, for the 9 Lofts 2 affordable housing project located at 716 East 9th Street, Lawrence, Kansas. And I see Brandon McGuire has made it up to the podium, but Sean is going to kick us off.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. Tonight, before you, you have an option to consider participation in a 15-year abatement at 95% for what's referred to as a neighborhood revitalization area.
Get closer to your mic.
Is it? Sorry. I'll hold it down. Brandon McGuire is here to kind of go over the plan. I believe this has gone through the city at least once. It would return back to the city, and there's also a plan presentation to go in front of the school district. So at this point, I'll kick it back over to Brandon.
Great. Thank you, Sean. Good evening, Commissioners. Brandon McGuire, Assistant City Manager, City of Lawrence. This is actually my first time presenting at a county commission meeting, so I'm pretty excited about that. And
We'll be kind, Brandon. We promise, since it's your first time.
Okay, so I'll be brief with my introductory comments. I'm joined by Tom Calico, the city's financial advisor from Baker Tilly Municipal Advisors. He has helped us on this project, and he helps us on a number of different economic development projects to support incentivized development. This project, 9 2, actually follows on 9 Lofts, which currently exists and operates nearby this location. The developer is Tony Kresnick. He has done a number of affordable housing projects and has really been a great utilizer of the LIHTC program, the Low Income Housing Tax Credit Program, which is a federal program for many years, which is for a few years now has been matched by state tax credits through the state of Kansas. This program is administered through the Kansas Housing Resources Corporation. So he is currently applying for a 9% low-income housing tax credit benefit to help with this project. This is notable because this very well is going to be the last 9% LIHTC round of awards. The state legislature passed legislation in the last session, and the governor signed that legislation into law, which sunsets that program in terms of the state's match to the LIHTC. So that program has been leveraged, especially by Mr. Kresnick, to bring in significant affordable housing development into our community, several hundred units over the last several years, including in this district that 9 Lofts 2 is proposed to be built in. I'll just say one more thing, which is this project would bring on 24 affordable housing units. These are 1-bedroom units. When we asked him about that, why 1 bedroom instead of 2 or 3, he did share with us that 1-bedroom units are the segment of the market that he finds most in demand. And he thinks that those will be filled up pretty quickly upon construction. There are also market rate units, 12 market rate units with this project, and I believe it is 6 live work units on the ground floor as well. So it kind of complements the mixed use character of that neighborhood close by. The city and county do enjoy a shared commitment to a place for everyone, our community's strategic plan to end chronic homelessness and address our affordable and supportive housing needs. Obviously, the city, I think you're aware, the city has really committed to leading in emergency sheltering and outreach, as well as affordable housing. We have a goal within a place for everyone to build 1,500 affordable housing rental units by 2028. We're making good progress on that goal, and every project helps, especially when we can leverage our local dollars and private investment with those federal and state housing tax credits. So that's largely why we're supportive of this project. The City Commission did adopt a resolution of intent to issue IRBs to award the project a sales tax abatement for construction materials. And they adopted on first reading the ordinance that would establish the NRA. And they also gave preliminary approval to the NRA plan. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tom Calico, and he'll walk through a summary of the analysis and next steps.
All right. Good evening, Chairman Kelly, members of the commission. Glad to be with you today. Tom Calico with Baker Tilly. If you'll bear with me for just a minute, I'm going to get the technology set up. There it is. Thank you very much. Sure. Thanks for bearing with me. Got a quick agenda that I put up here on the screen. I'd like to talk a little bit about the neighborhood revitalization areas. I understand it may be new to some of you, so we'll spend a little bit of time just educating you about the tool. Talk briefly about the 9Dale 2 project itself. Go into the requested participation from Douglas County, and then finish on the estimated fiscal impact to the county. All right, so quickly, neighborhood revitalization areas are created by state statute. They are designed to assist in helping with blighted areas and areas of significant architectural and historical significance. The project that we're talking about today is primarily in the blighted area category. You may or may not know the site has many uses over the years. At one time, it was a junkyard. There's a lot of subterranean stuff. It's been used most recently for some, kind of informal parking, and definitely an area that is in need of some assistance in order to bring it to the standards for the town and for the area. It is a rebate program. It works a lot like tax increment financing, but it's different in that it's a rebate program. And by rebate, what that means is the property owner actually pays the property taxes, and then is eligible to receive a rebate from the taxing jurisdictions after payment. And I'll go into a little more detail about the mechanics of that here in a little bit. The terms of the Neighborhood Revitalization Act are set out in the plan. The act requires a preparation of a Neighborhood Revitalization Act plan. which I believe you got a copy of in your packet. That plan sets out the eligibility, the terms, mechanics, and all that, how that's going to work. The participation, the city can create the area, but the participation by the county and the school district is voluntary. And the way that voluntary participation is created is through a cooperative agreement. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to pause, particularly on these initial slides, as we kind of go through the mechanics. And if we have any questions, I'm happy to respond to them. So any questions on what I've covered so far? Okay, so to the mechanics. As I said, it works a lot like tax increment financing, other than the fact that it's a rebate. Essentially, they're like tax increment financing. Before the project, you establish the base assessed value. And the taxing entities, so if the county were to choose to participate, the county would continue to receive all the taxes generated, all the property taxes generated from the base assessed value. So there's no loss of taxes received from the property. The base stays the same. The project's then built, and we now have a newer, higher assessed valuation. The incremental difference between the taxes generated from the base assessed valuation and the taxes generated by the new increased assessed valuation, that incremental difference in taxes, that is what's eligible for rebate. In this particular case, we're not saying 100%, we're saying 95%. So 95% of that incremental increase for the 15-year period. It does include all of the city, county levies, and all the school district levies, should they choose to participate, except the school district's capital outlay levy. It's exempt. Any questions on that? You're all either really, really sharp tonight, or I'm explaining this very well. I'm not sure which one. All right, so I won't spend a lot of time on this because Brandon did a great job of talking about the project. I think you're familiar with the location. It's pictured there on the map there at the northwest corner of East 9th and Delaware. Brandon talked about the fact that it's a affordable housing project, 24 one-bedroom units, 12 market rate, 6 work-live units. The affordable units will be targeted at 30, 40, and 60% of median area household income. It will be a 30-year. That affordability will run 30 years. It will be a land use requirement that will run for 30 years. The project will be eligible for Section 8. It's a approximately $14 million project. In addition to private debt and equity, we've got a number of other assistance, federal and state low-income housing tax credits, National Housing Trust Fund grant, and the city of Lawrence has I think it's $450,000 grant from its Affordable Housing Trust Fund for the project. So the incentives are the Neighborhood Revitalization Act, as we've discussed. And then in addition to that, there's a request for a sales tax exemption on construction materials through the issuance of industrial revenue bonds. I think you're familiar, industrial revenue bonds, call bonds. It's basically a way of, essentially, it's a way of creating private financing that is eligible for certain tax exemptions, like the sales tax exemption. It doesn't represent any financial obligation to the city, the county, or the school district should they choose to participate. We make a presumption, as I think the county does too, that affordable housing projects will not get built in the current market without assistance. So while we do conduct a formal but-for analysis for many of the projects that the city considers, we did not do one for this one because I said it's a presumption that affordable housing projects would not happen in the current marketplace, but for the requested assistance. And because this is a low-income housing tax credit project, the amount of assistance is somewhat self-regulating because the amount of tax credit will vary by the amount cost of the project. So if the developer were to have cost savings in the project, then actually the amount of the low-income housing tax credit goes down. Similarly, with the property tax rebate, again, if the investment isn't as high, then, the amount of tax, rebate that would be available is lower as well. So it is somewhat self-regulating. It's a performance-based incentive. If the project doesn't get built, if the project isn't as valuable as what the applicant assumed, then the amount of incentive is less and represents no financial risk to any of the taxing jurisdiction participants. So the
I have a
request,
question.
yeah, go right ahead.
So in your but-for analysis, you mentioned that it was a 30-year affordable housing. Did you do any analysis for what it would be if it was permanent?
No, we did not.
Okay. And so the developer has told us that he doesn't believe it's fiscally, economically possible to develop this project unless he is able to sunset the affordability portion of it after 30 years. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, the presumption is that it will sunset after 30 years.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't have any additional information to share on that.
Thanks.
I have a question also. I think I'm curious in this, the but-for analysis seems like the appropriate place to ask about this. How do we get to the 95% in the 15 years? I'm most interested in how do we get to the 95% as the amount of rebate request for
Sure.
an NR?
So the 95% represents a number that the applicant felt was necessary to fill the gap that's remaining after the other incentives that we talked about a moment ago. While we did not conduct a formal but-for analysis for this project, the city did ask us to take a look at the developer's pro forma and see if all the assumptions in terms of costs and revenues were reasonable. And we did conduct that analysis. We did determine that it was reasonable. So our expectation is that, if the project goes as planned, that the 95% level is appropriate.
Might be a Brandon question, but you can probably get there. The 9 Dell lofts that preceded this one, but kind of a similar format with the live work units below and apartments above. Was that also at 95% in 15 years?
Yes.
Thanks.
I'll follow. Maybe Brandon, come on up to the mic because this is a question just sort of about the city. As the city used to do the analysis of this on their own, is that correct? And now it's Baker Tilly who's doing the analysis, or Baker Tilly did it on behalf of the city in the past?
So Britt Krumkano, our former economic development director, she would conduct some analysis in-house. We also used NDC for some outsourced analysis for more highly technical projects. On affordable housing, I think that's an analysis she would conduct.
So going forward, it sounds like what I heard was we're not going to do a but-for analysis because it's affordable housing, and it's just there's an assumption that it would not be able to be developed
Correct.
economically if it's affordable housing.
Correct.
Are we also not analyzing to Commissioner Reed's point, the 95% and the 15% either? We're just saying we need affordable housing, so therefore whatever we bring forward. Is that how it worked?
No, it's not. In fact, we're working with other developers and coming up, we're starting from different positions and expect to bring forward different agreements. And there are a couple right now that are in the pipeline at various stages. So we may be back here in the next couple of months presenting on those. This particular project, we did ask Tom and his team to give it a reasonableness test for us.
Okay.
95% is a large amount. 15 years is a long term. And it is with the type of project that this is and the type of project that Mr. Kresnick has done, we don't think that those would have gone forward without the 95%. Our financial advisors said, yes, it is a reasonable assumption. Could we have renegotiated and tried to come up with a different project? We probably could have. I'm not sure he would have done it or it would have gone at this particular property. But that's something that we deal with on just a project by project basis.
Okay, thanks.
So turning to the participation that is requested of Douglas County, we're asking you to consider adoption of a cooperative agreement. This cooperative agreement, to some of you who've been on the commission maybe for some time, may seem very familiar to you because it's a cooperative agreement that has been used multiple times previously, and we just essentially modeled that on it. It sets out kind of how the parties will work together and references the NRA plan as far as the terms of this particular plan. The county appraiser, as you probably know or can presume, plays a big role in the administration of neighborhood revitalization acts because it's the county appraiser who sets the base value, determines the incremental value and the amount of taxes that are eligible for rebate. Recognizing that, the cooperative agreement does allow for the county to receive an administrative fee of $1,000 a year to compensate it for that additional work. Looking at fiscal impact, as I said, the base taxes continue on. So the base taxes would be received by the county plus that 5% that isn't rebated. Over the 15-year term of the rebate, we're forecasting that without the project, the county would receive a present value of $43,000. So that's the total amount of taxes present value to today. With the project, the county would receive a little over $100,000, again, present valued. That concludes my remarks. Happy to respond to any other questions.
Thank you,
Tom,
Tom.
stop sharing. Please stop sharing.
Thank you, Tom. Commissioners, do you have any additional questions?
I have a question for the county appraiser.
He's here.
Hi. My question is, when you appraise property, do you take into consideration whether apartments are below market rental or at market rental, or are you just appraising based on the structure itself?
For a project like this, there's state law in place that requires us to value it based on its actual use and its actual cash flows. And so because they have the residents paying a below market rent, we have to value it accordingly. And so the market value on a project like this ends up being about a half to a third of what its peers would be in the market otherwise. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and then at the end of 30 years, when all of the units go to market rate, then you would reappraise it at that time too, right?
We would if they get out of the project. I think to kind of go back to your 15-year question, the initial timeline for the tax credits is for 15 years. And then they usually re-up in the program. They have a window that opens for them to get out of the program. And then if they stay in the program, they're locked in until year 30. For us, what we've seen in this market area, some of them stay in the program and some of them get out and go to market. We've seen in larger urban areas like Kansas City, where they have a very strong market rate rental market, they will go back to the market rate. So it just kind of depends on the owner and if they want to stay in the program.
So there's an option at 15 years?
To decontrol the project, yes.
And do you mean that's Light Tech that gives that,
Mhm.
that option?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to clarify. I didn't know that either. That's news. to me.
There's a lot of hoops, and it doesn't always happen because if they get out of it, there's some clawback for the incentives, and the price point at which they have to sell it is set by the IRS, and it is nowhere near market. It has to do with a lot of the total costs and the write-offs the IRS gave them off of over the years.
Any other questions, commissioners?
A question for Tom. The final numbers that you presented, so it's without the project or with the project, and that is a total amount over the 15-year period where we would be having entertaining that rebate. So the 43,000 would be, you know, some total of 15 years of that base value. Does that include that value is increasing, or just like today's tax income off of that times 15?
If memory serves, I believe we assumed a 2% and 2% annual growth in value. So fairly conservative.
And then the 107 is the base value plus the 5% that we would be receiving, and that over the course of 15 years
That's correct. All present value to today's value.
with a 2% increase.
Yeah, correct.
Any other questions, commissioners? Okay, we'll open it up for public comment on this item. Does anyone like to provide public comment on this item? Anyone online, Sarah? Okay, we'll close public comment and bring it back to the commission for further discussion and or motion. You know, the one thing I will say to the city is, first, thanks for doing the work on it. And I'd love to have a little more information in the future about how we got to 15 years and 95%. Like it does seem like I understand the reasonable test. I think I do. But there was also some other data within in our packet that I think it would be helpful for the public to see, that sort of sees each line for the city and the county and what the benefit would be and what the cost would be. Maybe next time include that in those, since you said you were coming back. And I'm just really interested to hear more about how did we decide 95% was right and 15. Once it goes to the city, and this one has already been to the city, right? It does feel a little tricky for us to undo that work. So I just love to understand more. We need affordable housing. Don't get me wrong, and I'm supportive of the project, but it would just help me understand more about how we got to that recommendation.
Would agree, because I think maybe even 2 years ago, because I think we were in this chamber, in the other orientation, we had gotten a slide of similar projects when they were approved and what their percentage and timeframe was. And that was really a helpful context to find, like, how does this fit within the scheme of other things that our community has agreed to and benefited from, was very helpful, because 95 and 15 is on the on the generous end of how these projects come to be. So I would have liked more about that also. When we talk about, voluntary, participation from the county and the school district and everything, one of the things that we had explored in times past and been kind of not encouraged to go that route was for us to try and set a different percentage or a different length of time because of the amount of work that puts on staff to generate that, because county staff has to do that for all of those taxing entities. So yeah, it does feel like once it comes to us, we don't really have a lot of, it's a yes, no, as opposed to any chance to kind of dig into, is that the best fit from our point of view. So we're always a little bit on the tail end of that, because it's that the city is the driving factor behind it.
And I think if you had presented those numbers, the impact on the county actually is to the positive slightly on this one. But I don't think people understand that the county on these projects has a bigger amount at risk because we are more property tax based than our partners at the city. So that's why I think we're really asking, like, how do we become more involved without overwhelming our staff in sort of talking about what the terms are of these tax incentives.
Yep. I'll echo my commissioner's thoughts and just say, I think, I'm supportive of the project because we need the housing, and, respect the process as it exists, but I would like to understand it better in the future. And 95% feels really, generous to me. And so if I had a better understanding of, a bigger conversation about that, and a deeper analysis of it, or ability to unpack it a little bit more than just that was the number given by the developer, and we're saying yes to that number because it's a relatively small gain in taxes over time for us, and it's not all about that, right? It is about the asset of the housing. But to Commissioner Kelly's point earlier, I also, struggle with these projects that are only designed to be affordable for 30 years, and us not, it feels like we are sticking ourselves in a little bit of a vicious cycle. But I also recognize that there's a lot to it. There's the LIHTC program as it was, and we'll see, what the impact of that changes, and the national tax, credits too. That there's a lot of moving parts, which I understand. But yeah, in the future, I would like to understand it better, but not opposed to this project.
I got a question for Brandon. Are you aware of any current projects that are about to come off below market rate and go to market rate?
Oh, I am not. I'm sorry. I wish I had that information.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we're actually adding 24 units to below market rate, or if 12 are going to drop off in the next 2 years, we're really only netting 12.
Right. I mean, my guess, I probably shouldn't be guessing on record, but my guess would be we don't have affordable units coming off anytime in the immediate future. Just because I think, these types of programs, the development has really been, from what I can remember in my 11 years here, rather than, that's kind of when the Warehouse Arts District got going, and that was some of the first affordable development in the community. So I would imagine we're probably 15, maybe 20 years away from some of that first round coming off. Mhm.
Echo fellow commissioners in the fact that absolutely in favor of affordable housing, but disappointed that the city has not come to us as a collaborator. So in the future, we just really appreciate that instead of coming first, asking for a motion, but actually come for information and then become a collaborator. And then once we've actually collaborated, come before us with a motion.
I'm ready to make a motion if the chair is ready.
Yeah, I was pulling it up, but yeah, go ahead. That'd be great.
I move to approve county participation in the 15-year 95% neighborhood revitalization area for the 9 Lofts 2 affordable housing project located at 716 East 9th Street, Lawrence, Kansas, and authorizing the county administrator to execute a cooperative agreement with the City of Lawrence, Douglas County, and USD 497 for the administration of duties related to the 716 East 9th Street neighborhood revitalization area.
Second. Any further discussion, commissioners?
I just had one further question for Sarah. Is that $1,000 fee reasonable?
Can tell you it exceeds the cost of, because in addition to what is called for each year, we have to hand calculate the value of this taxes, remove it from the abstract in the tax roll, and it has to be done each year. So this involves staff not only in the appraiser's office, but in the clerk's office, administration, and the treasurer's office then to make the distribution payments. So it's less than what it costs us to do the work.
And Sarah, did we increase that fee recently? It feels like we
Yeah,
did
we did.
increase that recently,
Yeah,
right?
we upped it. It used to be $200,
Yeah.
I think, or $250. So I think some of the older agreements say $250.
That was a bargain. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further questions or discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you both. Appreciate it. All right, we'll move on to item 3.4, which is notification to the county clerk, the intent to exceed the revenue neutral rate for Douglas County with respect to the 2026 budget, establish hearing dates for the revenue neutral rate, hearing in conjunction with the budget hearing. Brooke?
Yeah, Brooke's going to walk us through a brief presentation, given that you've spent a lot of time in the last 2 weeks on this information.
Thank you, Sarah, and good evening, Commissioners. Bear with me just a quick moment while I pull up. I've just got a couple slides, nothing too. All right, thank you, Commissioners. Tonight, I want to talk about the next step in the process that is a process laid out by state law to formally adopt our 2026 budget. So Jake and I had the pleasure of attending the budget workshop that the state of Kansas does every year. And I thought that they did a really nice job detailing the budget timeline and everything that's expected of the local governments to get their budgets adopted. So I highlighted and read on this slide the next step in this process. And on Sunday, we have to notify the county clerk of our intent to levy above the revenue neutral rate. They will then use this information to provide that to taxpayers. And then between August 20th and September 20th, we're going to hold that revenue neutral rate hearing and then our budget hearing to formally adopt that budget for 2026. That budget then needs to be certified and submitted to the county clerk no later than October 1st. And then we'll turn around and we'll submit that to the state no later than December 31st. So, why I want to talk a little bit about why we're doing this. So there's a state law that says that if we adopt a budget that is even $1 more than what we collected in the prior year, that we have to notify taxpayers in their mailbox. The revenue neutral rate for 2026 has been established at 39.958 mils. Over the course of the past few weeks, we've all sat down and worked together through budget hearings and then budget deliberations. Sarah had proposed a flat mill levy of 41.298. The difference between those two values, so the calculated revenue neutral rate and what was proposed at a flat mill levy, was $2.96 million. During those work sessions, the hearings, the deliberations, the commissioners have evaluated the impacts of the levy rate and reduced that to 40.669. Staff is seeking authorization tonight to notify the county clerk of our intent to exceed the revenue neutral rate that has been established by the county clerk of 39.958 mils, and submit that using the clerk's prescribed formula or format. It's an online form, and staff will submit that once commission authorizes. This notification also establishes the revenue neutral hearing rate hearing, and then the budget hearing. Those hearings can be held in tandem. The revenue neutral rate hearing needs to come first, and then we'll do the budget hearing directly after. Staff has recommended August 27th at the 5:30 business meeting for these hearings, where we'll all come back and we'll formally adopt that budget and get it certified into the state. a little bit before we wrap up, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. And I want to talk a little bit about the values that we're using now versus the values that are finalized in November. So when we're working together to establish the proposed tax rate or mill levy rate for the 2026 budget, we're using an estimated value. County staff does a lot of work in between March and November to finalize those values, and then the county clerk provides final assessed values in November, which can either go up or go down depending on what happens between March and that time when those are finalized. And that value is the value that's used for the tax roll. It's also the value that's used to set the mill levy. So commissioners, you may see that we set a mill levy at, a certain rate, but then come November, it's off by 2. And what that is that if the value increases, well, your levy will decrease, so you'll see a reduction there. But if final assessed values come in below the estimate that we're using to set the rate right now, you'll see that increase just slightly. Both of those adjustments are allowed by law, but I thought it was good to bring up since we're kind of in the realm of setting those property tax rates and working with the budget now. If any of you guys next year look at the levy rate and you're like, that's off by 2, chances are our value increased or decreased based on what happens with the appraiser's office between that time. So I'd be happy to stand for any questions that you may have about what this notice is, what it means for us. And I'd be looking for commissioners to establish that rate tonight.
Changes are due to appeals.
Yes, that's the word I couldn't quite come up with, but yes. So there's been a couple different scenarios over the years. I know one year we had state assessed values that were revised. Those come from the state. They're not assessed locally by our county appraisers. So, but some of it also can be due to appeals and things of that nature.
And what I'd say is Brooke said 2, what I want to be really clear with the public and commissioners is very rarely would that be 2 mills. We're talking about 0.002. They're very small changes just in terms of the total levy.
Thank you, Sarah.
Do we know if Westar has appealed their rate?
No, I don't know.
That's a big bunch of money there.
So Brooke, that mill levy decrease between the current or the prior year 41.298 and the proposed for this year, is that 0.629?
Commissioner, the difference between the revenue neutral rate as established by the county clerk.
No, she's asking for last year's levy.
Last year's mill levy to this year's proposed mill levy.
Oh, I'm sorry. So this year I didn't do that, but yes, I think it's 0.662 and I have it here if I need to pull it up.
It's 0.629.
Thank you.
Thanks. I was just checking my math too.
And I think we have the calculus of what that means in terms of actual dollar amount value. It's 1.3 million of tax of revenue that is not going to be received. The difference between my proposed budget and what the commissioners finalized this morning. So it's a reduction of 0.629 mils from last year.
That is correct.
Any further questions for Brooke? Okay, we've been talking about this a lot for days, so I'm not surprised there are questions. Thank you, Brooke. Appreciate it. Open this up for public comment. Anyone here in the courthouse like to provide public comment on this item? Anyone online, Sarah? Okay, close public comment. Bring it back to the commission for further conversation.
I just had one question. The math worked? There was no math
Oh,
issues?
the math worked, and I appreciate your patience and letting me just letting Brooke and I have a couple hours just to make sure we both looked at it from the same angle. Commissioners, I really do appreciate your understanding that this is an incredibly complex process, and we've got a lot of math that has to be done in a pretty quick period of time to make sure that we're doing this accurately.
I'll just make a comment in that I do hear from people who would like us to maintain that revenue neutral rate, and I do understand that. And I do think that there are increased costs that come to the services and to the resources that Douglas County is committed to providing. And so while I understand that we could continually cut to get to that revenue neutral rate and get those inflationary pressures that happen, I'm really proud of the work the commission has done to keep that mill levy as low as possible and still provide the services and resources that are so important to Douglas County. So heard, and I think this is a reasonable number that we came to.
Just like to put in a plug for a riveting 21 hours of public meetings. If anyone wanted to go back and watch the work from the last couple of weeks, if you didn't get it the first time around, you can watch it on double speed. It'd be even better that way. But there's a lot of conversation, a lot of work, and a lot of nuance that goes into working through the budget annually, and with 5 people and 5 different opinions and thoughts, and hearing back from staff and hearing back from partners. It's a pretty monumental process.
Sarah and Brooke, I know I'm putting you on the spot, so if you don't have this number, fine. We had, I think, over $12 million in supplemental requests.
Sounds about right.
Do we know the amount that we did not approve of those supplemental requests, what the difference was? I know I'm putting you on the spot, and I can figure it out myself.
But that's a good thing.
Something we've talked about before.
It's a good thing we'll put in our materials, our publication materials in advance of the public hearing. So that's a good note.
Yeah,
Right.
I don't want to highlight really turning things down, but I think we do sometimes hear from the public that we need to think about cutting. And there are lots of requests that happened over the past number of days that we did not fund, I think partially to listening to our taxpayers who have communicated some challenges with meeting that tax burden. Thanks. Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, I do want to add that while we're doing updates on timelines, and I'll say it again when we do the CFD hearing, an additional step on July 30th, we're going to have at 4:00, we will have a review of our capital improvement plan, our 5-year capital improvement plan, and a review of the Consolidated Fire District Number 1 budget. That is in advance then of the public hearing on that date in August.
Commissioners, I'm happy to make a motion to authorize staff to notify the county clerk of the intent to exceed the revenue neutral rate for Douglas County in 2026 and establish hearing dates for the revenue neutral rate hearing in conjunction with the budget hearing.
Second.
Go ahead, Brooke.
Commissioners, if I may have you let me know, are we using the 41.298 mils or are we using the 40.669 mils from our worksheet today? We had discussed it briefly, and I just want to make sure I've got clarification on what you'd like me to submit for that.
Thanks, Brooke. So what I'm going to do is withdraw my motion so we can continue to have discussion about that. And I'm glad you caught us because we talked about 2 things. Commissioners, I was leaning into the idea that we were approving the 40.669 mill levy rate, not the 41 rate. Does anybody have something different?
Be good for you to make sure we make
Yep.
that clear in the motion.
I was just rereading and I wondered, it should maybe be in the motion
Motion.
language, but it's not. It's just in the background information. So maybe we can just
Yep.
incorporate it in the
Thank you,
motion.
Commissioners. I appreciate the modified motion.
Let me retry this motion. I make a motion to authorize staff to notify the county clerk of the intent to exceed the revenue neutral rate for Douglas County in 2026 with a rate of, wait for it, 40.669 for the 2026 budget. And establish hearing dates of, you want to say those dates again for me?
27.
August 27th for the revenue neutral rate hearing in conjunction with the budget hearing.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion, commissioners? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Brooke, you want to continue on with CFD 1?
Thank you, Commissioners. I'd be glad to. I'll spare you from the same slides that I just showed you because the information is the same. However, I will share some information about what the proposed budget that you have.
And maybe while Brooke's
Included.
pulling this up, I want to say I'm commissioners, I apologize that we didn't get the review of the budget for Consolidated Fire District Number 1 in before this hearing was set. Staff proposed a flat levy to CFD 1, and I hadn't heard any concerns about that flat levy rate. So we didn't get the timing quite right on this. Next year, I'll make sure that we get at least our conversation with CFD 1 in before we have this conversation. So I want to apologize for not getting the timing of our conversation on that and on time.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. The recommendation would be to have the tax rate remain flat at 5.5 mils. As you can see, the value of 1 mil for this particular district is about $315,996. The revenue that is generated by that current or by the proposed 5.5 tax rate is approximately $1.7 million. That is the tax that staff is requesting to be generated to support the operations at Consolidated Fire Number 1 for the 2026 budget.
Are you going to show the map?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was confused. I thought that was at the
Thought the
budget
map was for
hearing.
July 30th.
I apologize, Commissioners. I do not have that.
I'll see if I can find it pretty quick.
And so the reason I was wanting that kind of visual is why that mill is so different from the county budget, which is countywide, every city, every rural address, all of that within one, 1 mill being 1 per thousand, versus the CFD1 mill value, which is that 315.9 amount, because it excludes the southern part of the county, it excludes Grant Township, it excludes the city of Lawrence, city of Eudora, and it's just that white area. Thank you, that was very fast. That white area. So that's why this is such a different conversation from the county amount, and why it's just the folks within that white area are paying into this tax. And that's why that mill levy is calculated differently and why it's a different budget process.
Yeah, the value of a mill for all of Douglas County is 2.2 million. The value of a mill for CFD1 is 315,000.
Go ahead, Brooke.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, yeah, it's basically what we just did for the other.
I had a question about the presentation we got a few weeks back that the consultants presented, and they mentioned in there that there was a rate approved for 5 years of 5.5.
Correct, that's 5.5 mils.
But it just said it was 5.39, so we didn't use the total of the 5.5.
I think that 5.39 is the revenue neutral.
That would
Number.
have been revenue neutral.
Yep. So the current rate would be the revenue neutral rate at taking off any increase in the assessed value.
I was
That's
hung up
right.
on the same thing on that slide. It tricked my brain for a second too, Commissioner Dorsey.
So just the timing of all of this, we've, since consolidation, we've had those, 5 years at 5.5 mils, which I don't know if that was written into agreements specifically, or just kind of that was the conversation that was had with the townships to not close any stations for that time period and to maintain that 5.5 mils while Consolidated Fire District 1 kind of was stood up and figured out what the needs were going to be. The needs are very great. That was the presentation we had a couple of weeks ago, and we've known that, but that was kind of the first holistic view we've had of the organization, and we've been hearing these things from the community and from Consolidated Fire District 1. The needs for staffing, the needs for truck replacement, all of those things that kind of came out in the report. Normally in our budget process, we would be asking these questions and having conversation between staff and in this case with Chief and his staff in March. That report came in just a couple weeks ago. We haven't talked about the budget as a whole. Normally we wouldn't do it this way, but I would like to have a discussion about is there an interest in producing a little bit more mill for this organization, even though we do not yet have that full-fledged plan for what that would look like, which is how we've always done budget. But I know the needs are very great. They've really limped along to get to here, provide a great service with what they have been allocated, but it's been hard.
My question then would be, is the recommendations that were in the consultant, are those to be implemented in 2026 or 2027?
They're going to be implemented over a series of years. I mean, I think it's probably, we said it was a multi-year implementation phase. And commissioners, and the timing has just not been great on all of this. Ideally, we would have gotten that report from ESRI much earlier in the process, and it would have informed more conversations. I kept it, I proposed that their levy stay flat because we didn't have those recommendations at the time I needed to set my proposed budget. You only heard of them on July 2nd. And what I have learned over 5+ years with Consolidated Fire District 1 is that everything takes a lot of time for a lot of communication. So I didn't want to surprise anyone with a mill levy increase without a more comprehensive work plan as to what those costs were going to be and how we were going to get there. I think now we've got time to do that for 2027, but I do understand it's I think we can do some things under the 5.5 mil to make progress towards the recommendations outlined, but it's going to take a long time and a lot of work to get all of those things accomplished. And I think we need time to look. Our thought, it was just our thought was, let's build that work plan and share it with the community, get input from the stakeholders and the commission, and then we'd be really in a strong position for next year for the 2027 budget to be able to justify what we think we need to do and when. But obviously, we will stand at the will of the commission if they want to create a higher ceiling for CFD1. That's all you'd be doing at this point is creating a higher ceiling for them, and then you'll hear from us on the 30th, and then you could decide if you want to stay at their rate, their flat mill levy of 5.5, or if you want to do something a little higher.
Commissioner Willie, I just want to reiterate what I heard Sarah say to make sure I understood it, because what I understand is what we're setting tonight is we could go higher. We can't go higher. We can only go lower. So I think what you're asking for is there's some interest to set it a little higher And then my question back to Sarah is, you mentioned 27, like you certainly want a certain amount of time. Does that give you more time for us at least to have more of a robust hearing than we've had before? Or do you really want more time to put that work plan together?
I don't think we'll have the full work plan by July 30th.
Right.
I think we can show you what we plan to do inside the proposed budget, what our proposal was, and what progress we think we can make in that regard. But the total priorities of what gets done when and by how much and by who, it's going to take us time to develop. But certainly, it's clear that we are going to need additional resources to make that happen. I really think the commission is going to be heavily involved in setting that strategic vision and that strategic plan and how we decide what to do, when, and how. So I think that's going to really take more time to transpire. But we will have more information for you on the 30th that would, inform maybe what we plan to do and some initial steps that could be taken.
Well, we know that the need is there. I mean, based on the report, I think the need is extremely great. And I would absolutely be in favor of raising, especially if we have the opportunity then to lower once we have a better understanding of where we sit after the 30th.
I know it's really unusual for us to do things this way. This is a common process at the city, which is what they did last night, to set a lid that they will then work under while they do their full-fledged process. We do it differently. I like the way we do it, that we have all of our conversations and know where we're going to stand and be able to communicate that with the public. So I don't love doing those two things differently at all. But I do think that some extraordinary circumstances in terms of the need that's there, our inability to address that need for such a long period of time because we had an agreement to keep that mill levy flat for 5 years. I think that things can be done to address things in the report within that budget, but not without sacrificing other things that are also needed. So there's nothing in there that's free or extra. I know we've been able to put away a little bit towards that equipment reserve for the last couple of years there, but that equipment reserve is so tiny compared to the need. So they're tight. I would just put out for discussion amongst commissioners. I know there's a lot of pros and cons about doing it this way because we will not have the kind of detail and fleshed out plan that we ask for from staff when we give them enough time to do it. But I would propose having a conversation about a $500,000 increase or a $500,000 lid that then we could have some conversations to see whether that would put it at 6 mills. Do we want 6? Do we want to go back to 5.5?
I don't have any big opposition to it, and I certainly can see where you're coming from, Commissioner Willie. I think part of me is like doing the math and feeling like that's not a very significant bump up to still work under. It's something, but given the value of a mill,
I can give
I
you the
don't know
number.
how much
if you
of a
want it.
difference that it would make. But I mean, I'm just going on the record and saying I'm not opposed to that idea or that option.
How much is a $500,000? About 180,000?
It's 157,997,
Thanks.
which for an organization with only a few positions, I mean, and when staffing is the biggest issue, there's several staffing positions within that realm. So it's significant for an organization of this size.
Commissioner Dorsey, I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts as the person who my district doesn't have a township represented. So I'd be interested in hearing what you think.
Well, roughly about a third of it, I think, is in my district based on the map. And I have a large contingent that doesn't like taxes. But just because we add half at this point doesn't mean we have to spend it. It just means, gives us a little flexibility. So I think I could support that at this point.
Commissioner Willie, it looks like you might want to make a motion.
I move to authorize staff to notify the county clerk of the intent to exceed the revenue neutral rate for Consolidated Fire District Number 1 in 2026 to the potential cap of 6 mills and establish the hearing date of August 27th for the revenue neutral rate hearing in conjunction with the budget hearing.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Not taking public comment on this item.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we did. My fault. Let's take public comment. Is there any public comment? Oh, wait. Can we withdraw the motion?
I will withdraw my motion and
Thank
have
you.
public comment. Thank you. Sorry.
No, that's my fault. Is there any public comment on this item? Anyone online?
Would Chief like to make a comment on this item? Chief, are you interested in
No.
speaking to this?
Staff doesn't need.
Okay. Commissioner Willie, you want to try again?
Oh, I'll try again. Okay. I move to authorize staff to notify the county clerk of the intent to exceed the revenue neutral rate for Consolidated Fire District Number 1 to a potential cap of 6 mills in 2026 and establish a hearing date of August 27th for the revenue neutral rate hearing in conjunction with the budget hearing.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further conversation?
I would just make one further comment where if we can't come up with good ways to spend the money, we're not committed to go to 6 mills.
Yep.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. All right. That finishes our regular business agenda. I don't believe we have any appointments this evening. So we will move on to Commissioner and Administrator Miscellaneous, and we'll turn it over to Sarah for her memo.
Thank you, commissioners. My memo's in the packet. Just no really new dates that you would have all seen. We've added the upcoming agendas down into August now, so you can see some of those. Just a reminder, we are not meeting next week on July 23rd. There are 5 Wednesdays in July, so we took one off, and that's the 23rd. And then on the 30th, we will have at 4 o'clock our review of the 5-year capital improvement plan and the CFD1 budget. And that's all I have for you, Commissioner.
And that was the one that went out as August 6th.
Yes, it was on the initial proposed budget press release. It said August 6th. And so I'll make sure, Carrie, that we put out information that is on July 30th. And I've spoken to some of the media representatives to make sure they know that we are doing that on the 30th. That's all I have, commissioners.
Thank you. Commissioners, I'll let you know that October also has 5 Wednesdays. So if you have a preference for which of the 5 Wednesdays we take off, please let Sarah know so we can let staff know as soon as possible which night we're taking off. Any miscellaneous items, commissioners?
If I may, I just want a big thank you to Sarah and Brooke and my colleagues and all of the staff that supported those conversations and the community partners that helped answer questions. It was a phenomenal process, and I was really pleased to serve with you all to work through that.
Agreed. Thank you.
You're here. All right. Anything else? All right. We're adjourned.